This morning I have the distinct pleasure of thoroughly embarrassing my friend Mark Goldberg, while at the same time having the honor of presenting him with the IPA Lifetime Achievement Award. The task of summing up in just a few minutes a career and contributions as rich and varied as Mark's, let alone much less conveying to you what kind of a man he really is really intimidating for me. I've been struggling with this. But let me start with what Mark means to each of us in this industry. I consider him the North Star of this industry, not just a star, because his guidance has been indispensable in making the IPA a more effective organization and in addressing the industry challenges we have faced over the years. Mark has provided thoughtful counsel for virtually every essential initiative of the IPA for almost a decade. And let me give you a few examples. Mark recognized a critical need to influence regulatory and legislative policy, so he motivated the IPA to form the Policy Advocacy Committee, where he's been an active contributor since its inception. Mark recognized that the actions of the IPA impacted a much more broad constituency than simply sponsor organizations, and that collaborative efforts would result in better and more enduring progress for the industry. So he championed the metamorphosis of the IPA from primarily a sponsor-driven organization to a professional trade association with all industry segments represented. Mark championed transparency and the formation of best practice standards, recognizing that uniform standards were essential for a more broad-based product acceptance. And looking back, I think it was a stroke of luck for our industry and for all of us that Mark was elected chairman of the IPA in 2014, a critical time when the existence of the industry was under assault. Recent events had increased media and regulatory skepticism about our investment products. The industry had experienced its first fundraising decline in years, a 20% decline, and the regulators were in hot pursuit of what I call their two Manhattan projects, 1502 and the DOL fiduciary rule. The IPA needed someone who could diffuse those threats, and the conclusion was unanimous. The voice of the IPA had to be Mark. Just by way of one experience, because it's hard to describe Mark's contributions, I was present when Mark turned what we thought was going to be a pro forma meeting with the DOL task force into a seminar on how to develop rapport and credibility. Mark was the professor. Mark's patient advocacy tempered 1502 and helped convince DOL to abandon the approved asset list and pave the way for our products to have the opportunity to be in qualified accounts. Fortunately for the industry, Mark was what the times called for, a man with the experience, knowledge, and personality uniquely suited to the situation. To continue the World War II analogy, Mark was like the Winston Churchill of our industry. The career path that prepared Mark for that role began as an analyst and due diligence officer in integrated resources in 1988. Now, unbeknownst to Mark when he was hired, and like Leonardo DiCaprio, he was getting on a ship that was headed for some icy North Atlantic storms and a serpent on the rocks to boot. Tax reform, scandals, and an absolute decimation of the real estate industry was wiping out the limited partnership industry. But Mark navigated the challenges of that environment and emerged with an investor-centric perspective that endures to this day. Mark's work on behalf of investors was award-winning even at that time. He was named 3 times to the Investment Advisor magazine's due diligence all-star team, and he was ultimately inducted into its Hall of Fame. Mark was even asked to testify before the U.S. Senate Banking Committee. The topic, investor protection. And that investor focus has stayed with Mark throughout his career in the broker-dealer community at Sun America, and as president and CEO of Royal Alliance, and as a founding member and director of FSI, and at WP Carey as well. Mark has been an integral part of the success of that sponsor organization. Allow me to share just a few of my personal reflections on some of the qualities which explain not only Mark's success, but why those of us who have had the opportunity to work with him really admire him. Mark is a man of prodigious intelligence, a gift which I'm told from reliable sources comes directly from his mother. He's articulate, well-educated, and thoughtful. And Mark's intellect is never in neutral. It's always in drive. And an example of that is, I recall the time, Mark, when you and I were vigorously debating an issue, and he whipped out a dead-on point quote from a 13th century Sephardic philosopher named Maimonides. How do you win an argument with a guy that can do that, right? Mark's, every industry challenge that came along was like turning the key on a Ferrari. Mark's engine would start up, and he never stopped until he found a solution. Mark has enviable people skills. He has the ability to not just listen to people, but to truly appreciate diverse perspectives, to reassure people that their concerns are understood, and then to work collaboratively to forge solutions. Mark has extraordinary creativity and vision. His work with regulators always involved a creative wrinkle to fashion a compromise that not only was acceptable to the regulators, but also in the long run worked to the benefit of the industry. And he had the ability to see beyond the immediate horizon, as evidenced by his pioneering of structures in this business, and I'm sure he's working on the next one as he sits here in this audience today. Now, you probably have heard the familiar saying, those who can do, those who can't teach, those who can't teach, teach Jim, and those who can't teach Jim, administer. And you may be tempted to think that Mark is probably a gifted head of capital markets, but he probably can't really sell. You'd be wrong. If you have any doubts about Mark's ability to invoke the charm of a true salesman, I invite you to introduce yourself to his wife, Karen, beautiful and talented woman, and then ask yourself, how could Mark get a woman like that? The answer, he's a born salesman. Mark is instinctively generous. It's a fundamental part of his character and springs from a genuine concern for people, a concern that's constant both in his professional and his private life. On the professional side, I suspect that many of you in this room have one time or another reached out to Mark for advice. And Mark always responded, even when helping you was helping a competitor. Mark's inclusive view of the industry and his innate generosity motivate him to try to lift all of us to success. And that's Mark's approach with all of his colleagues and employees at WP Carey. Helping them to achieve the full measure of their innate capabilities is truly a life mission for Mark. And his achievement of that mission is evidenced by the actual words of people that work with Mark, which we're going to see in just a couple of minutes. In his private life, Mark's generosity and humanity is exemplified by his long-standing relationship with St. Mary's Healthcare System for Children in Bayside, Queens. Mark's worked with singular dedication to enable St. Mary's to provide care for many children afflicted with long-term disabilities. Of course, Mark is dedicated to his family, and it seems a bit counterintuitive that a man as driven and absorbed in his profession as Mark recognizes the importance of family above career, but indeed he does. And importantly, he encourages all of his employees to do the same. He's uncommonly dedicated to his wife, his children, his mother, his entire family. He is a little bit different than us. Mark likes to pay tuitions. And the proof of that is he has 9 children, which is quite an accomplishment, although Mark, I don't know why you didn't go for the dozen myself. Finally, Mark has immutable integrity. Today, as we look at the state of affairs in our country, I think we appreciate more than ever the simple truth, it's all about character. And when it comes to integrity and ethics, Mark has my total respect and admiration. He never compromises the righteous path, even when it must be traveled at personal or professional expense. So put these personal attributes of Mark together and you have an effective and inspiring leader, a trustworthy confidant and advisor, a visionary with the ability to convert ideas to reality, a man of honor and immense generosity, a man for all seasons. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'd like you to hear what some of Mark's coworkers have to say about him. Can you roll that video, please?
Describe Mark in 3 words. I would say integrity, intelligence, and experience.
He's smart, generous, and dedicated.
Exceptionally bright, very creative, and able to put things into context.
I hired Mark in 2008. I often say, one of my claim to fame at WP Carey was hiring Mark.
I've got lots of Mark Goldberg stories, but one of my favorites is when he called to make me an offer in 2008 to join WP Carey. He said, "I want to make you an offer that's going to change your life." And those weren't just words to Mark. He meant it, and he's lived up to that. He's excellent at gaining a deep understanding of what all stakeholders' objectives may be, bringing stakeholders to a consensus, to a workable solution. And it was masterful to watch him do this with the DOL regulation, FINRA 1502, valuation standards.
He's been a leader in the thought process. He's been a leader in coming out with different classes of shares, for example, in our CPA 18 fund, the Class C share. I think it's really helping both WP Carey and the broader industry to adapt.
Mark single-handedly pioneered the T-share structure for our industry, which today is the largest segment of business that's being done.
Mark is one of the most passionate, thoughtful people that I've come across. Where I've come to appreciate him more from is really the integrity he brings to the space. Bill Carey was always a proponent that, you raise capital based on the investment opportunity you have. You don't go out and raise capital just to raise it.
So the inaugural Lifetime event was given to Bill Carey, the founder of our firm, and somebody who gave me this tremendous opportunity. And it's quite humbling and somewhat unfair to think that I'm getting an award that Bill got.
Mark is not simply a star of our industry. He's the North Star of our industry. He's guided it with extraordinary insight and skill through the most challenging and frankly perilous times that we've faced in the past 3 decades.
I believe what we do at the IPA in the alternative investment segment is provide something that's truly unique in the democratization of investing in all types of assets that, but for the people in the room and the people that have the good fortune to be in the industry, wouldn't happen. It's just a tremendous privilege to be out on the field of play doing it.
I'll ask you again to put your hands together and join me to acknowledge our colleague, our trusted advisor, our North Star in perilous and uncharted seas, my dear friend and recipient of the William Polk Carey Lifetime Achievement Award, Mark Goldberg. Come on up, Mark.
Very few times in my career I've been at a loss for words. I think this may be one of them. Much of what Keith has outlined of my career was just not one person's effort, and you shouldn't come across in hearing the activities both at the IPA and earlier in my career as those accomplishments of mine, because they were really the accomplishments of many, many talented and committed friends and colleagues. And sometimes it was actually Keith, who is my friend as well as my colleague. I share this award and all the sentiments that go with it to all of you, all the people who worked with me on so many of these things that I'm being called out for credit. I think some of the best decisions that I've made in my career is of building teams of incredibly talented individuals with an unwavering persistence and purpose. People with high standards of ethics and integrity. They never quit until the goal is accomplished. It's actually you that I admire. It's so true that it's easier to give than receive. So many times in my career, I'm standing up here giving awards, and as I think about it, I don't really want to reflect. It seems like a moment you would want to reflect about your career. I'm going to take a pass. I think it's more important, perhaps today, to to acknowledge beyond the personal satisfaction that I have in my career, what and who is most meaningful. Because my career is far from over. It's hard to get a Lifetime Achievement Award. I can reminisce about my career 20 years from now. I picture myself then in my 70s, and I'll be sitting in the front row over here, listening to one of my kids being recognized. And obviously, Keith pointed out that I have a big family. Quite a big family, so my odds are good. 2 of my children are here with us in Chicago. And I think I'm glad Keith hit upon the fact that I do have a big family, because I think at least evidence is that I'm not all work and no play. To my children, I'm so proud of you. I trust you'll take away from today what I know, and a lot of parents in the room know, that is that your possibilities are unlimited. Live your dream, do what you love, fill a need, and fill it big. Be of service. You'll not only succeed, but you'll find joy in doing it. Invest in your friends and your friendships, because they're the ones who show up in all the important moments. And most importantly, find the partner you love to enjoy it all with. And as Keith pointed out, I am a lucky man. Really, really lucky. My mom, who Keith pointed out, is here listening too. And while I imagine you all think your mom is the best, you're wrong. My mom is, at least for me, so I want to direct a few words with your indulgence to her. See, probably the hardest person in the world to thank is your mom, because the gratitude owed can never be fully acknowledged or repaid. The lessons taught, the sacrifices made, the values you learn, you just can't say enough. How do you capture the love, the admiration that is yours? I know I can't adequately do so. So at least know this small thing, Mom. For me, this recognition is as much yours as it is mine. You are the one whose lifetime is an achievement. I'm just carrying the ball forward. Let me conclude with thanking the board of directors, Tom Sidema, for his leadership and his outstanding words this morning. They were dead on point. Tony, the staff of the IPA, as well as my colleagues at WP Carey. The accomplishments of the IPA are indeed, as Tom put it, a collaborative effort, sometimes spanning different leadership, many years of focus on the collective good that can be achieved when we set our minds to a goal. In a business environment where we tenaciously compete with each other, it is rewarding to know that we have and we will continue to work as an association together for the betterment of all. And that is the magic of the IPA. One last thought before I step off stage. I believe that despite, or perhaps because of, the massive changes in our industry that are underway, we are uniquely positioned to thrive as never before. I believe that it is time to gain a deeper understanding of what lies ahead. Don't wait until it's too late. Plan your own path for success. Don't wait for others to define it for you. Get it right, and you will reap the benefits for years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for innovation, engagement. It is time for boldness and leadership, and I know you're all up for the challenge. Thank you for this award coming from all of you. It is deeply, deeply appreciated.